In observing permaculture, you'll find millions and millions of principles, but they've been diluted down to a dozen, which really give us a good perspective of how to utilize this technique. And so the first is to observe and interact. We need to observe the environments around us, and observe the systems, the ecosystems, and interact with them and discover the responses. When you go out and you focus your life to be positive, even though you observe that the life generally is negative out in the society, you'll observe that there's a lot more reciprocation, a lot more things that bring support to you. So it's important that we have that observe and interact. We can't just be like scientists in a laboratory looking at nature, because even looking at nature, we have altered the natural system of itself. So we have to understand that we interact on our everyday, even just by breathing on the subject in the lab. The second fundamental principle is to catch and store energy. So if you think about how systems work in nature, everything is trying to slow the dissipation of energy. Everything in nature tries to capture the sunlight and to transform it into another form that's going to last for even longer than that ray of sunlight, which then can be eaten by another creature, which then goes into a reproductive cycle. And so it's all about catching energy in any form you can, be it the water that comes off the roof when it rains, we catch into barrels and store, use that in plants which we then consume, rather than just putting it into the drains of our city and shipping them off to the ocean. So it's all about, reducing the dissipation of the energies and resources that pass through our systems. The third is also really important, is obtaining a yield. And if I was to ask you all about a yield, what comes to mind? What do you think of as a yield? Pardon? Production in terms of how much can be grown, right? So if you think if you're looking at a cornfield, it's how many ears of corn can you get off of an acre. If you look at how many a wheat field, it's how many bushels of wheat can you get off an acre. And so that's a sole focus on yield. Yeah. Yield is something that is a product of a process. So corn, if you look just at the food aspect, a corn plant yields the corn that we then eat. A wheat plant yields the grain. Does anyone know what yield is in French? C'est genre le produit, ouais. So it's the definition or the connotation of how we look at the yield, how we look at the produit. What is exactly a yield? Well, if you look at an ecosystem of a forest, it's not just producing trees, right? There is the leaves that fall from the trees and that accumulate on the soil, on the ground, to produce soil and food and habitat for insects. The leaves also absorb moisture. So when the rains come, they are harvesting water in the soil. So the yield is now wood, it's also soil, it's also habitat, it's also absorption of water. If you just look at the corn in the farmer's field, the stalks of the corn is what we used to make ethanol out of. And before Prohibition, where our own production of ethanol became illegal, Henry Ford made the Model T so we could run off our own homegrown ethanol from corn waste. So a lot of looking at yield is breaking the box and thinking about what is different about how we grow things and what else can we yield. If we have a system that protects the soil, then soil is a yield. If we have a system that protects the people, then community is our yield. If we have a volunteer organization that really treats its people well, then the yield is more and more energy because people keep coming back and they bring friends. So yield is very, very diverse, but it's been diluted by our system today to mean how many ears of corn and how many bushels of wheat. We don't even look at all the other aspects of the system. So the fourth is self-regulation, so accepting feedback. One of the misconceptions I find a lot in our societies today is that we feel that a hierarchy is non-natural system. We look at consensus-based as always the solution. And that is a great solution, especially for community-based organization. However, if you look at nature, there are natural hierarchies. But the difference between our hierarchies and a hierarchy of nature is that it's a feedback system in a hierarchy of a tree. If you look at how a tree functions with its leaves and its roots, is the leaves are producing sugars and they're consuming water. So they're pulling water from the roots and in the soil, and they're always pulling from the base, from the lower part of the hierarchical system. But whenever the leaves have surplus sugars, they send those surplus sugars down through the phloem into the roots to help fuel root growth. And so it's a two-way hierarchical system. There's always a communication. if there wasn't water in the roots, the top of the tree doesn't keep growing more leaves. It all of a sudden will stop leaf growth and remove excess leaves that it doesn't need from the tree. So there's always that communication, and this is what we need to do when we establish hierarchies within our businesses, within our cities, and within any other system, is we need to have a feedback loop that's integral, that's designed within that system. So fifth, we need to use and value renewable resources and services. So looking at the energies that our volunteers bring to us, the services that the natural environment brings to us, and really valuing the renewable energies that pass through our environment. So be it the wind, or the people, or the migratory animals, or whatever system it is. The sixth is to produce no waste. In nature, there is no waste. Every waste product is a food product for another system. We throw things away, but where is away? There's no away now, and especially now that we see this globalized world. So it's important for us to realize what is the function of the products that we create. And it's not that you don't débarrasse, get rid of things. It's that as long as when you're getting rid of things and you're done with them, they're utilizable by another system, by another being, by another function in nature. Right? One of the best designs that I heard of was William McDonough, who wrote Cradle to Cradle, which is looking at full cycle design of products. He talks about in India there's these small bags of soap, because people usually buy soap by the load of wash and not by a huge amount. And so these little plastic bags are blowing in the wind because people are buying hundreds and hundreds of them over the years. What they did with their company was they redesigned those plastic bags to utilize the extra cellulose from agricultural waste and the extra fertilizer in manure from agricultural waste, and they made a bioplastic with it that was rich in nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium. So the children run around cleaning up the streets all day because those bags they then sell to farmers who melt them down in water and irrigate their fields with them as a natural fertilizer. So this is full cycle design. When we look at our society today, what do? We recycle. And even in that principle, it's reduce, reuse, recycle. Recycle is the last hope in that cycle of renewal of products, right? But we focus